This particular program, this anhydrous safety training program, started back in January, and with a local producer here that requested some information, would like to do something. So I contacted Mr. Nowatzki, and we started visiting about it. And we picked a date, and today was the day, but we were supposed to be on farm, on location with this training, but because of today's situation that we're all battling, and hopefully we're all going to win this situation and come out of it and on the other end in good shape, we are now doing this through the virtual network and through this Zoom deal. So with that, we'll get right into it on this anhydrous ammonia safety training. And we got two speakers with us here tonight, Mr. John Nowatzki, and I'll introduce him first, and then Mr. Kent McGuire. Once we switch over, I'll introduce Mr. McGuire. But John is at NDSU. He is in our agricultural and biosystems system with NDSU Extension. Got his BS degree in 1968. So John's been around with us for a while. Got his master's in 1974. He joined Extension quite a long time ago. I know John and I have known each other for a long time. And so it's good friends that we always get to work with. So John is, his current deal is Ag Machine System Specialist, and he coordinates all of these machinery systems education programs. So with that, I'm going to be quiet and turn the program over to you, John, and let you talk about some anhydrous safety.
All right, thanks, Kurt. And yeah, it would have been a lot more interesting if we could have done this in person, but then we probably wouldn't have had anybody from those I states either. So there's an advantage to doing it this way. First of all, these are the topics we're going to cover tonight. And the first two topics I'll cover, what is anhydrous ammonia and why is it dangerous? And the second one on personal protective equipment. Then the second two on transporting and it's both on the road and in the field application, Kent McGuire will do. So we'll start with this. And the first thing, excuse me, I might have to be sipping on my coffee here a little bit once in a while to get my throat going. The first thing that I want to point out is that a lot of what we're going to cover tonight is included in this NDSU extension publication. This one is covers all of the topics that really are important. Has different sections, but it focuses on the characteristics of anhydrous, the types of exposure, again, personal protective equipment. It's got a safety checklist, and it's talks about what to do when you're transporting it and what to do when you're out in the field. This is available online, and you can read it online or you can download it. And for those of you who are in North Dakota, you can just, if you want a printed copy, just stop at your county extension office and they'll be able to get you a copy. I think I haven't looked at this chat here, but the web address should be there so that you can either download it or read it online. So when we talk about anhydrous ammonia, and the focus tonight is all about safety, and we've had so many accidents on farms this last year. A lot of it has to do with the tough weather conditions, but so many times when people get injured or die in farm accidents, I think it's because people think that, well, I can do it this time, I can get by this time and then I won't do it again. But once in a while that fails. And when you think of anhydrous ammonia, I think that the key to remember throughout this whole presentation is that anhydrous is dangerous. And if you inhale it or get it on your skin, it's going to have some very negative impacts. And the reason for it is that anhydrous is one atom of nitrogen and 3 of hydrogen per molecule. And that word anhydrous means no water or lack of water. And so that's really the key to the danger with anhydrous, is that it needs water. And so in one way or another, once it gets out as a gas, it's going to get that water. And normally, anhydrous ammonia in the tank is a liquid under pressure, and it has a tremendous affinity for water as soon as it's released. One of the good things, I guess, first of all, anhydrous is clear and it's colorless as a gas, but it has a strong odor. And so, that's a positive thing. As you see that or smell that, if you smell it, you need to get away from that. Now, I realize when you're out in the field applying anhydrous, sometimes you're going to smell it because of it, coming back out of the ground as you're applying it. But the key again is that normally, if you get a high enough odor, you just try to get away. So that's a good thing. But if you get a concentration of between 1,000 and 2,000 parts per million, you're going to have some real serious injury, both potentially to your eyes, but also to your lungs and to your skin if you're close enough to it. And a leak is going to spray, at least 10 feet away. Again, it is a compressed liquid, and it's stored under pressure to prevent vaporization. If you would let 1 cubic foot go, again, it would be 855 cubic feet of anhydrous ammonia. The retail tanks and the nurse tanks are set up to take at least 250 pounds per square inch. And in a terminal situation, it's refrigerated and kept to minus 28 degrees. And at that point, it's a liquid. But again, you see in this picture to the right that, and those of you who apply anhydrous, you know that you see it coming out, and if you're going, with the wind, you're gonna smell it. At that point, it's not, that's not going to harm you. But the exposure levels that really will harm you, first of all, again, that 50 parts per million, or 50 parts per million is not going to be a problem, but you will detect it. Anybody will detect that right away. And it doesn't have to go up very much until you're going to start to get an exposure. And that exposure in your nose and in your throat, you can take it and it shouldn't be any damage. But once it gets up higher, then very quickly you'll have severe damage. And so, the message is here, if you can, if it's irritating your throat, if it's irritating your nose and throat, then it's time to get away from that. Because as it gets more serious, as it gets a stronger concentration, the result is so serious. Now, in terms of the temperature and pressure, again, the temperature drops from 100 degrees inside to a minus 28 degrees. And so you get a quick, what's called an ammonia freeze on skin right away on contact, and clothing will actually freeze to your body. And so if you have that situation, you need to immediately get as much water on as possible. And I know we're going to talk later about the need to having water all the time. So again, the message on this slide is that if you get anhydrous on your skin, it's going to be this freeze burn immediately. And if you get it, inside of you, it's going to be even worse. And obviously, we'll talk about eyes as well. And again, anhydrous means, without water, and it has once it becomes out into the air or into the soil, it has to get that water to stabilize. Normally, when you inject it into the soil, that water, the water molecules are coming from the soil. You know, it's safe that way, and once it changes into NH4, it's safe. But NH3 needs to get that water. So if you get it into yourself, your eyes and your nose and your lungs are very high water. So it takes that water immediately from you, and it burns the tissue unless it's diluted quickly with a lot of water. So anytime you get this on your skin, you need to get your skin, whatever it is, covered with water as soon as you can, because it's not going to take very long before that tissue is going to die because of the chemical burn. So I guess, you know, the message here, you got to have water with you. Anhydrous freezes the clothing right to your body. So if you get this situation, if you have this situation, you can't really pull the cloth off of you. You have to just keep pouring water onto it and then get to a medical situation and allow them to take it off. Because if you try to pull it, it's going to pull the skin away as well. And as you read through this, you'll see that the recommendation is not to apply any salves or creams or anointments. Just keep adding water, and the more water that you can add, the better it is. The most serious issue with exposure to anhydrous immediately is your eyes. Again, you know, your skin and your flesh is 70% water, but your eyes are almost all water. And so the anhydrous will immediately try to get that water from your eyes. So in this case, the most important thing is to be able to flush your eyes as quickly as you can with water. And everyone who works with anhydrous, whether it's on the store level or on the field level, needs to be carrying a bottle of water, a squeeze bottle of water that's got, you know, 5 to 10 ounces all the time with you, because the key is you've got to get that water in immediately. And that little bit isn't going to really solve the problem, but the idea is if you carry a squeeze bottle of water with you, then you can maybe get to that 5-gallon bucket of water that's going to be on your anhydrous tank. Another thing is that, this is, you know, kind of tough to look at, but if you get it in your eyes are going to want to close shut. And so you want to keep your eyes, force your eyes open and add water as much as possible. And you're most likely, if this is going to happen, you know, people are going to be by themselves. They're not going to be with other people. So it's going to be difficult to do. But again, the message is get as much water into your eyes if you get it there as possible and as quickly as possible, and then maintain that. The other thing is the exposure to your lungs, and that's going to happen once you get above that like 200 parts per million level. That's going to happen when you get, if you have a hose leak or break. So once you get that into your lungs, it's going to be, you know, very serious and could result in death very quickly. So the message here is, if you know, if you see this, get away from it, and don't, you know, it's hard to think not to save it, but don't worry about it, just get away, because this high level is going to be so harmful to you right away. The most important thing, once you get it into your lungs, since you can't get water in there, the most important thing is to get to medical attention. And again, out in the field, that's not going to be easy, but again, that's the key message here. Excuse me. And I think what we'll do is go through this quickly and then be able to, answer questions after Kent is done. But I guess my message here, obviously, the idea that anhydrous is so dangerous because it needs to get that molecule of water. And the good thing is it has that strong odor. If you smell it, get away from it. The effects on the body are very minimal to start with, but they increase with strength. I think, just always remember when you're working with anhydrous, when you're out in the field, that it has this potential danger. And so just always think safety first, and don't worry about losing the product if you do have a leak, or if you have a hose that leaks or something like that. And the other thing is to try to get assistance as soon as you can. So I think with that, probably a little bit faster than you thought, but let's go on.
I think, John, right now, let's get Mr. McGuire up. If you would stop sharing your screen, John, and then that way Mr. McGuire can share his screen. It would, and as he's doing that, I can give him an introduction, and we'll address the questions, and hopefully you folks out there will be able to have some questions here in a little bit. I see Mr. McGuire's screen is starting to show up. He's in the he's headed towards where you can get the, there you go. But Kent McGuire is the Safety and Health Coordinator for the Ohio State University College of Food, Ag, and Environmental Sciences. He is responsible for safety compliance and employee safety on the campus, research farms, and the Ohio State University Extension offices. Through Extension, he works to address the Ohio ag industry to address workplace safety issues. His work experience is 25 years in agricultural construction and industrial safety management, 12 years as an OSHA outreach trainer, 20 years as a volunteer fireman and emergency medical technician in a rural community, along with his involvement in a family farm and ag production. So with that introduction, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Mr. McGuire.
All right, thanks, Kurt. I appreciate it. So let's take some of the safety that we talked about earlier, and we're going to continue on and focus on roadway and field application safety. And so basically we have two objectives here that, we want to discuss roadway transport safety as far as it's concerned with the applicant, and review safety practices during field application. So before we even take a nurse tank out on the public road, we'll do just a general walk around of the nurse tank, and we should do a general walk around. Hold on a second. We should do a general walk around, and that would include checking the running gear and inspecting the frame, the tongue, or any sort of damage to the structure. We also want to check the tires and make sure that they're properly inflated. We want to make sure that the tires are in good condition. They're not badly worn or any signs of weathering. And then hitch pins and those secondary chains are free of damage, and make sure that both the hitch pin and the secondary chains are attached before even moving the nurse tank. We also want to consider operator age for individuals transporting anhydrous ammonia. Some states, and I'm going to back up a second, the majority of this is geared towards state laws in North Dakota, as John and I discussed earlier. And I'll highlight some differences maybe with some of the Ohio laws, but I know we have some people from Illinois. But some states require that you must be 21 years of age on the roadway. Ohio is one of those states. I didn't find any criteria like that for North Dakota, but again, you might want to check with your state laws. When towing a nurse tank on the road, it's highly recommended that you use something to tow the least equal in weight to the gross weight of the nurse tank towed. And what I'm basically saying here is we want something that's big enough to pull the nurse tank so that it maintains some stability, and you can maintain control of that nurse tank should an incident while you're on. As far as speed, the speed limit for anhydrous ammonia, when towing anhydrous ammonia tanks on public roadways, is 25 miles an hour, and an SMV emblem must be displayed on the rear of the towed nurse tank. As far as personal protective equipment, and I think John mentioned some of this earlier, all vehicles transporting anhydrous ammonia should carry a container of at least 5 gallons of water, and usually that's already on the nurse tank, but make sure that there is water in that tank. And you must, the towing vehicle must be equipped with protective PVC, neoprene gloves, and a tight-fitting safety goggles. And the thing to keep in mind is to make sure you have that personal protective equipment in every vehicle. If you use multiple trucks or multiple tractors to tow anhydrous nurse tanks, make sure that you have that personal protective equipment in each one of those vehicles. Let's talk a little bit about some more roadway transport, and this is specific to North Dakota, what I have on the screen here. But in North Dakota, you can tow no more than 2 portable tanks behind one vehicle. Now, to clarify, in Ohio, the state law is completely different. With a pickup truck, you are only allowed to tow 1 anhydrous ammonia nurse tank. With an applicator, a tractor and an applicator, you're only allowed to tow 1 anhydrous ammonia nurse tank. You can, however, pull two nurse tanks if you're towing them with a tractor. So just a tractor and 2 nurse tanks. However, in Ohio, I also want you to keep in mind your anhydrous ammonia supplier may have standard procedures in place where they will only let customers take 1 tank at a time. I know of a couple of our co-ops that do have those rules in place. The other thing in North Dakota, and this is the way it is with many states, the overall length of the entire transporting unit may not exceed 75 feet. And also in North Dakota, nurse tanks can be transported only on public roadways between sunrise and sunset. And that's really a rule that makes a lot of sense. It's really a good best practice, so to speak. And then always make sure that you have the safety chains being used when you're towing the anhydrous tank, both on the roadway and in the field. And again, check your state laws because they can vary from state to state. Use extra caution. Be a defensive driver. And whether this is with transporting nurse tanks or even moving equipment from field to field or to another farm, as an operator, we need to be on the defensive. Many times, and I'm sure we've all been in that situation where the general public's not aware and really not concerned with what we're doing on the roadway. We're, in many cases, that they may have the attitude that we're in the way. And so we have to be the defensive driver in that situation. because we know the cargo that we're transporting. Also remember, stopping distance is greatly increased when towing a load, especially maybe in adverse conditions like rain, where the road may be wet. We need to prepare to come to a stop with that increased distance. And then also when we're making turns, we want to slow down and we want to make wider turns. This time of year, if you get off of the roadway, you know, the ditch embankments can be very wet, they can be soft. And so if we get those tires or that nurse tank off onto the shoulder, we may put ourselves in a situation where we may roll that nurse tank over. And then should a leak occur when you're transporting down the road, if it's a leak that you can stop, make sure you wear the appropriate personal protective equipment. Again, having that in each vehicle ensures that you'll have that equipment if you need it. And then always approach from the upwind side whenever possible. If it's not practical to stop the leak, and we've seen situations that are like that, and if you can drive and move that vehicle to an isolated location away from populated communities or heavily traveled highways. And in North Dakota, if that's the case, and you get to that isolated area, you can call the toll-free number or call 911. I know 911 is going to be a universal emergency call regardless of what state you're in. So again, if you do have a severe leak and you can't get it stopped, make sure that you at least try to get the tank away from that populated area. Let's switch gears a little bit, talk about field application safety. I think John mentioned it earlier, always have water readily available. And this can include a small squirt bottle of water, 5 to 10 ounces, keep it on you at all times. And then also have the 5 gallons of emergency water that's typically mounted on the nurse tank. PPE for field application should include long sleeve clothing. I know John talked about, you know, with leaks, clothing can freeze to the skin and things like that, but that long sleeve clothing can also help be a barrier and be protective. You want to have goggles, protective PVC or neoprene gloves, and a respirator with approved cartridges, and have personal protective equipment to use, extra personal protective equipment to use if needed. If you know, pair of goggles breaks or you get a hole in your gloves or whatever the case may be, always have an extra set of PPE around. And then wear your PPE when you're connecting or disconnecting your nurse tanks with the applicator, or even making minor repairs or adjustments in the field. The cab, if you're going to be working around the applicator or the nurse tanks. When changing nurse tanks and making field repairs, always work upwind of the applicator and the nurse tank. If you can see the picture there on the right hand side of the screen, even with a little bit of wind, you can tell which way that anhydrous ammonia is going to drift, and you obviously want to stay upwind of that. Applicator knives, flow meter, hose connections, bleeder valves, all of those things could be exposure opportunities for an unintended release. If you've spent any amount of time applying anhydrous ammonia, you know that there's times where you're going to have to make field repairs, where you have a hose that leaks or a knife that breaks. And again, I can't emphasize enough, have a plan of how you're going to park the equipment, how you're going to work on the equipment to make sure that any if you have to bleed off any valves, or if any potential exposures or releases, I should say, that vapor will end up going away from you and not towards you. Again, when changing nurse tanks, park the tractor upwind before opening any bleeder valves or disconnecting hoses. I would also mention here, make sure that you shut the door of the cab. I've seen this happen before, where the tractor was actually parked downwind and the door of the cab was open, and the white cloud actually encompassed the cab, and that could be very irritating for quite a long period of time, even after it dissipates. Point the hose end away from you and make sure that the connectors and connection points are clean before coupling the nurse tank to the applicator. And again, bleed off the pressure in the hose before disconnecting. Hand tighten valve handles. Over tightening with a wrench can cause damage to the valve or to the seals. Those valves are meant to be hand tightened. And inspect and replace hoses and valves as needed. Again, the more we use the equipment, the more it wears out, and we need to make sure it's in good working condition. Watch for pinch points or crush points when hitching the nurse tank to the applicator, especially if it's a two-man job where you're helping somebody connect or hitch the nurse tank to the applicator. If they're backing the applicator up to the nurse tank, make sure you give yourself an out. Make sure that you don't get caught between those two objects, the applicator and the nurse tank. Ensure your hitch pins are secure and secondary chains are attached. Some of the fields that we apply anhydrous ammonia in can be pretty rough. So we want to make sure that nurse tank is secure when it's hitched. And in the picture below, we'll show you a good example of what happens when the hitch pin comes out and the safety chains aren't attached. And then park nurse tanks empty or full downwind and away from busy neighborhoods or houses or public areas or businesses. In the event of an accidental release or even vandalism in the middle of the night, and there would be a release, we want to make sure that release goes away from any populated areas. So just to kind of summarize some things up, when we talk about road transport safety, ensure your nurse tanks are in good working order. Have PPE in each transport vehicle, and know your state law for roadway transport, because each state has some different laws. And then safe practices during field application. Ensure the equipment's in good working order. Plan ahead. Work upwind for hitching and field repairs. Again, have PPE available and make a habit of wearing it every time. And then also keep in mind, throughout the whole spring planting season, shortcuts can lead to those injuries. And so in this case, shortcuts can lead to that unintended release or unexpected exposure. And then you can find more information regarding anhydrous ammonia safety or agricultural safety in general at our agsafety.osu.edu website. And then there's my contact information. I'm located in the Ag Engineering building there on the campus of Ohio State University. There's my phone number, my email. Feel free to reach out and contact me if you have any questions or anything like that. So I think with that, I will stop sharing and let Kurt take over.
Thank you, Kent. This is time for questions and answers, and we have two ways we have that we can do this here this evening. You can type in your questions on the chat if you want to do that. If you don't want to do that, if you don't like to type, kind of like me, I'm a one finger guy. If you want to unmute yourself and then go ahead and ask that question, or if you have a comment, now is the time. So we'll give some opportunity for questions and answers.
One thing that I'll want to point out in my working with anhydrous in years past, I find that I think people don't pay attention to that 5-gallon container of water, and it's even important to keep that water fresh, because if there's any exposure to it, and if you use it a little bit, it can get anhydrous in it and it'll reduce its effectiveness. So that water really ought to be changed on a regular basis. I guess theoretically every day, but certainly every couple of days that water should be changed. And I think Kent mentioned a little bit about having that personal protective equipment, those gloves and goggle and the water in every vehicle. And there should be one on the equipment. There should be something in the tractor, but there certainly should be something in the other vehicle too, so that wherever you are, you have it. But again, fresh water makes a difference.
John or Kent, I have a question for you folks. These tanks that we have that we're using, we have some relief valves, some pressure valves, some of those things on those tanks. How often do they, what is the lifespan of those relief valves, and how are those managed? How should people be managing those?
Well, there is a on the publication that we suggested here on page 6, there's a checklist there, and they do indicate everything that should be checked. The answer to your question, though, I really don't know. Maybe somebody else online knows that, how often they have to be.
A gentleman responded 5 years from the date of manufacture.
Okay.
That came up on the chat list. Hoses. Is there a time frame on hoses? Anybody can respond to that, please.
I'm not sure. Kent, are you aware of the exact time?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I know that on a lot of the hoses, it is based on the manufacturing date, and I'm not sure if it's 5 years as well. I've got to be honest. I rely on our local co-op to make sure that all of our nurse tanks here for our farm are up to par and safe to use. So.
Yeah, I just did some real quick checking, and for a it depends on the type of material used, but for a rayon braided one, it's 2 years from the date of manufacture, and for a nylon Kevlar, it's 4 years from the date of manufacture, and for something that's stainless steel, it's 6 years. So you can't just leave it on all the time, forever.
Yeah, we're actually getting a few comments here in the chat room that the replacement date is etched on the hose itself, or the remove by date is on the hose. And I thought that was the case, but I wasn't sure year-wise. And again, I think it depends on the material, like you said.
Comment also come in on the chat box there. A person is unable to get new anhydrous filters for their mask from their normal supplier. They just made a comment. So if you folks are looking for supplies and you're not actually in the field like we are here probably in North Dakota, now is the time to be trying to hunt those down a little bit.
Is that not being able to get them, is that the result of the coronavirus issue or not?
I'm not sure. Carmen, can you, you're the one that made that comment. Can you respond to that for us, please? She just responded, she believes so, that it is probably responsible or due to the coronavirus. Any other questions out there? Okay. Claire Keene from Williston Research Extension Center is having difficulty finding regular dust masks to purchase. And I'm sure that's also due to our COVID situation.
Yeah, I think any type of personal protective equipment mask right now is going to be very difficult because the demand's so high.
She followed up with normal suppliers have said it's because they are being prioritized for medical use. We're all getting affected in one way or another from this situation. And biggest thing, I hope that everybody that's on this particular deal, we all be safe and we take those preventative measures to keep ourselves safe and our families. More questions, comments?
On a coronavirus issue, my wife had a fever 2 days ago and was tested and came back negative. So that's good. The other good thing is, at least in where I am in Fargo, it only took 6 hours for the test to be completed.
6 hours?
Yeah, I got the results back, which we thought was pretty good.
Yes, that is very good for you folks, and I'm happy to hear that the test result came back the way it did for you. More comments or questions?
I think we all could use a little bit of tractor therapy here in the next few weeks. It would do us all a lot of good.
Kent, can you, I think I know of some folks that are on the call here, and we're gonna, but before I get to a question that just popped up, I know some folks that are on this chat, they prefer red color. Can you help us out with that?
Well, let me see what I can do here.
See if you can find a red shop. Oh, holy smokes, you found
How's
a red
that?
shop real quick. That's great. The question is, what are the training requirements to fill your own tanks? And Kent or John, can you address that? Or if you folks want to defer, somebody in the audience can address that.
There's somebody from a retailer that would help.
I know here in Ohio, our Ohio Agribusiness Association provides an anhydrous ammonia school every year, January, February-ish, where all of our retailers or even some of our private farms that refill their own tanks, they send those individuals to that formalized training school. And they cover really all aspects from stationary storage and transferring to nurse tank and roadway safety.
The question has also got a follow-up, just to kind of clarify it, was from a producer standpoint. Any comments to that?
No, but I can certainly check that out and get back to you. You know, just you've got my, or you had my email. It's my first name dot last name at ndsu.edu, and let me know. I can check that out.
Or you can, in this particular case, John, if you want, when you find that answer, you can get it to me, because I know who is, I know this individual.
Okay.
So I can also follow up on that aspect.
I'll check that.
Kurt, I was going to add something to that if I could, please.
Sure.
Again, this is Ken Mueller with CHS. I think for that question is from the producer's standpoint, the CGA code does state, and again, I don't have it right here in front of me, but pretty well states, if you are handling anhydrous ammonia, being touching it, paraphrasing here, but, if you're doing anything with ammonia itself, you must be trained. So I guess what we do at CHS, and again, that's not here, per se with anybody else, but we do have a 2-day training course that I put on myself that pretty well goes through the properties, all that kind of stuff. It's a hands-on class. And then when you get done with the 2-day course, there is a 100-question closed book test that you have to take and pass. And then we also have a skills assessment. And what that is, and the purpose behind that is now to go back to your company or your farm, or whatever you're doing there, and then actually do some of those things. In other words, don your PPE, roll the cuffs. Where is the emergency shutoff cables at for your ESVs? Where's emergency water tanks at? That kind of stuff. So it's a complete training program, a 2-day thing. But I think a lot of producers do have something out there. You probably just have to ask them.
Ken, does that also cover checking, again, like those replacement dates for hoses, replacing valves and things like that?
You mean, is it discussed in the training? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Yeah. It's pretty thorough. I pass all that stuff around the room. People get a look at the hoses, the relief valves, the ESVs, back checks, excess flows. Yeah, it's all passed around. We discuss all that. So that's why it's the 2-day course. When we're sitting here, at an hour into this, and and you think, oh my word, what are you going to cover for 2 days? Well, that's why there's a lot there.
Is that for your employees primarily?
Yes, we started out with just CHS employees. We've also done firefighters. We've done OSHA. We've done state inspectors. We open it up to anybody and everybody. We're not here just to say for CHS. We want safety for everybody. So, it is opened up. So if you guys would like something, I can talk to you offline, and we can discuss something, or I can send you guys a book. You guys can look at the manual yourself.
A few years ago, we did 2 of them in North Dakota, ammonia safety day-longs with a group from. Actually, it was a group from California that was a Ammonia Safety Association group, and included some intentional, leaks with people with protective equipment that were able to shut it down. But that really was more focused on dealers and suppliers rather than for farmers.
Yep. But matter of fact, again, sorry, guys, for talking so much, but I think, John, maybe also what you're talking about there is we've also done 2 or 3 times in the state of North Dakota, live release fire department training for anhydrous ammonia. We are planning on doing that again. I want to say we haven't posted the dates, but I believe we've got 2 or 3 locations we're planning on doing this summer in June or July. So again, I'll get you guys that information. I don't know if you guys have attended it or not, but we do probably have 45 minutes of, it's designed for the firefighter, emergency responder, police officer. But we kind of go through this. This is anhydrous ammonia, properties and stuff that the firefighters need. Then prior to the meeting start time, we've rolled a nurse tank over. We show them how to upright a tank, the safe way and proper way. And then we do have a live release that is all controlled, and then they get to go in as a team and do the simulation of closing the valve and shutting it off. So again, it's all free, and I'll get that information to you guys where we're going to be. But I believe up north of Minot, I think we're going to do a couple of them, and then maybe one down toward the Dickinson Taylor area again.
That would be very good.
Yes. Ken, when you talked about your 2-day school there, and you said that was mainly for your employees, but you've opened it up. If you've opened it up, is there a fee that you have for producers if they want to go through that type of a training?
well, this is being recorded, isn't it? But no, at this time, no, that I guess where CHS is we want everybody safe. We want everybody trained. So, no, now if you guys come rolling in there with 300 or 400 people, yeah, they might say something, but no, they're not charging for anybody. It's again, it's for the community. It's here to help.
Thank you. I think if you could share that with either John or myself, then we can help get the word out that when these trainings are taking place, and for the emergency responders and so forth, and hopefully that they can take part on it. And if producers want to, then too, they can also just better prepare their operation.
Yep, agree. Thank you.
Anything else, folks? Any other comments from the audience? I'm watching the chat. Or if you don't want, like I said before, if you don't like typing, go ahead and unmute yourself and chime in here.
I find it interesting that there's so much more anhydrous used in western North Dakota than there is in eastern North Dakota. And I'm not sure why that is. But some of it may have to do with soil conditions. But it may also have been due to the illegal drug issue that was common here about 10 or 15 years ago. And that kind of stopped a lot of farmers from wanting to use it. Kurt, do most farmers in your area use anhydrous, do you think?
There's quite a few. Yes, there is. The other thing that we are running into challenges too out here is because of it's an unintended consequence because of our long-term no-till. We are running into some acidic soils with high nitrogen, and we've put on a lot of nitrogen over the years. So when our soil pH is dropping or down in that 5.5, 5.4 or below, we're starting to free up some of the aluminum access out here, and which is makes these crops almost look like, even in a good growing conditions, looking like they're in a drought stress. It really affects their roots. And so we've got some challenges there. The long-term fix to that is we got to just get our pH back up, and using some lime applications. And we've done a lot of work this past winter trying to educate folks on that aspect. So, but yeah, to answer your question, there's a lot of anhydrous that is used out in this part of the world.
Mm-hmm. Kent, is that true in Ohio too, where it's more anhydrous than other forms of nitrogen, do you think?
Yeah, I would say so. Anhydrous ammonia is the primary nitrogen fertilizer, and I haven't seen too many people applying yet. I would expect if we get some good weather here in the next week or two, I'll see a lot of nurse tanks up and down the roads.
When we got started, I had asked some folks to kind of indicate to when they were going to see some wheels turning, and I'm just scrolling back through to see there was a gentleman from Illinois. It said they're planting corn. West Hope, they responded, no idea. They're talking 2 weeks before they can get in the fields for anything. West Central Indiana is planting corn and soybean spraying. North Dakota working on a drill in New England. Waiting for snow to completely melt. Probably 2 weeks away before we get in the fields. So those are some of the comments that came in earlier in the chat of when folks were going to get to the fields. So we have We have frozen ground here yet, if you didn't see that one in the chat. Individual just commented to me, thought Easter Monday, but now cold weather forecast, time will tell. So we are, for those of you in the eastern part of North Dakota, the other parts of the country, western North Dakota is, we are kind of, we don't have any white. We don't see any white anymore, but it's, we're a ways off. And I thought maybe Easter, but with this cold weather coming on, or colder weather coming on, I'm not sure when that's going to be.
I think in eastern North Dakota, we'd be happy to be in, and if we get there by the 1st of May at this point.
I think
I mean,
you guys got some.
We wouldn't be happy, but I think that's probably where it's going to be.
Comment, if you folks didn't see it in the chat box, an individual, they say their address is Reeder, North Dakota, but live in South Dakota, and they fill their own tanks, and they are inspected every year by the state, and you have to show proof of some sort of training every year. So I think that goes to show what Kent was talking about. Make sure you understand the rules and the laws of the state that you're operating in. Any more comments? We are recording this, so once we have Mr. Scott Swanson, one of our NDSU IT people, are on with us, I'm assuming tomorrow we will get together and get this recording so that we can get it looking nice professionally, and then get it up and get it posted for those of those folks that didn't join us that do want to watch it later on. So, parting comments, Mr. McGuire.
Glad to be a part of North Dakota tonight. We've all had to adjust how we've done our programming and our extension work, and I'm grateful for the opportunity that you guys offered to have me on and be a part of this discussion. I think it's a very important topic, and again, we always talk about this. Safety needs to be first.
I agree. Think safety all the time. And I always think, you know, this idea, well, you can get by with it once, but always think safety every time.
Thank you, Kent. Thank you, John. We will sign off at this point in time, and you folks can go enjoy the rest of the day.
All right. Thank you.